She stood at my door, soaking wet, clutching her coat like it could hide what she'd done. She once left me for the man she swore was just a friend. And now she was back. "Please," she whispered. "I have nowhere else to go." I looked at her. Not with anger, not with love, just silence. The kind of silence that changes everything. She didn't know it yet, but the man she left behind that day wasn't the same man standing in front of her tonight. Before I tell you everything, let me welcome you. My name's Carter, and I've lived long enough to know that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes, it comes from the person who swore they'd never hurt you. If you've ever trusted someone, and they made you feel small or dismissed because of your age, tell me in the comments. I read every story, and I know how much they matter here. When people looked at us from the outside, they saw a quiet, steady couple. The kind that neighbors point to and say, "Now that's real love." We had been together for decades, built a life from almost nothing. I worked, she managed the home, and we built a rhythm that felt unshakable. Or so I thought. My name is Carter, and she was my wife, Anna. She had a way of lighting up a room without even trying. People liked her. She made them feel welcome. And I loved her for it. I trusted her with everything. She was my partner, my best friend, my safe place. We had one son. He'd moved out years ago, living in another state with his family. He checked in every now and then, but wasn't around much. We didn't have a big, noisy household. Just the two of us, and the kind of silence that felt warm back then. The kind that makes you believe everything's fine. Then there was her circle of friends. I didn't pay much attention to them at first. One of them stood out, though. His name was Mark. He was the one she laughed with the most. "Just a friend," she'd say, smiling in that easy, familiar way. At dinners, she mentioned him casually, like he was a background character in our lives. And I believed her, because why wouldn't I? Even our neighbors used to say, "You're lucky to have each other." We were the couple they'd wave to from across the fence. She was the friendly one, I was the quiet one. People thought we were solid. They thought we had something rare. But what they saw was the surface, the pretty frame around a picture that was already starting to crack. Behind the laughter, there were small shifts, ones you only notice if you know someone deeply. She'd linger a little longer on her phone. She'd dress differently for her lunches with friends. She stopped asking me to come along. And little by little, the woman sitting across the table from me started feeling like someone I didn't fully know anymore. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't shout at you from the beginning, it whispers. It creeps in through quiet doors you didn't even realize were open. To the world, we looked unbreakable. But inside this house, something was already changing. People think betrayal hurts because of what's lost in the moment. But that's not the real wound. The real pain comes from everything you gave before it happened. All the quiet sacrifices no one else sees. When Anna and I first started out, we had nothing. Just a rusted old pickup, a patch of land that looked more like a field of weeds than a farm, and a dream we built with our bare hands. I remember those early mornings when the frost bit at our fingers and the air smelled like cold earth. We planted every seed together. When the wind rattled the roof at night, we held each other and believed tomorrow would be better. And it always was. I worked 2 jobs, long shifts, calloused hands, and a back that still aches every morning to remind me where I came from. She handled everything else. She cooked, cleaned, and made that house feel like a home. That small patch of land slowly became something beautiful. It became ours. Every tree, every stone, every broken fence mended was a piece of our history. And there's this porch, the one she stood on the night she came back. That porch is where I asked her to marry me. It's where we drank cheap coffee out of chipped mugs and laughed like we owned the world. It's where she told me, "We'll always be us." That's what makes betrayal so cruel. It doesn't just break the present. It rewrites the past. I put everything in her name years ago. The house, the land, the accounts. I wanted her to feel safe if anything ever happened to me. It wasn't about power, it was about trust. I thought we were on the same side. I thought we always would be. So when she walked out that door, suitcase in hand, following a man she once swore was just a friend, it wasn't just a woman leaving. It was every sunrise we shared, every sacrifice I made, every piece of this home that carried our story. This house isn't just walls and wood to me. It's the book of our lives. And the moment she left, a chapter closed that I never thought would end. The first cut wasn't loud. It didn't come with shouting or broken plates. It came on a quiet evening over dinner, the kind of night where everything should have felt normal. She was sitting at the kitchen table, laughing at something on her phone. I asked what was so funny, trying to share in it like we always used to. She didn't even look up. She just said, "You wouldn't get it." Not soft, not kind, just sharp enough to leave a mark. I chuckled under my breath, pretending it didn't hurt. But the way she said it, like my presence didn't matter anymore, like I was an old chair in the corner of a room she'd outgrown. That's what stayed with me. A few nights later, she dressed up for a late dinner with friends. When I asked who was going, she sighed, rolled her eyes, and said, "Why do you care so much? It's not like I have to explain myself to you." That was the first time I saw it, the small, cold wall between us. It wasn't about where she was going. It was about how she stopped seeing me. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I swallowed it whole, the way old men do when they've been taught to keep peace at any cost. But inside, something shifted. I remember every word, the sharp tone, the way she wouldn't meet my eyes. It was small, yes, but betrayal never starts big. It starts like a splinter, quiet, buried deep, waiting to rot everything around it. She walked out the door that night without saying goodbye. I sat there at the table, her empty chair staring back at me like a wound I couldn't bandage. That was the first sting, and I felt it in places words can't reach. After that first sting, it didn't take long for the small cuts to turn into wounds. They didn't come all at once. They came in pieces, scattered like broken glass across days and nights that used to feel familiar. It started at the dinner table. She used to set 2 plates, light a small candle, and talk about everything and nothing. But slowly, dinner became quieter. She'd scroll on her phone with a smile that wasn't meant for me. She laughed softer, like she was trying to keep her joy a secret. When I tried to talk, she'd respond with half sentences, distracted eyes, or silence sharp enough to bruise. Then came the first boundary pushed. I'd been saving some documents about the house and the farm, old deeds, insurance papers, things I've kept safe for decades. One afternoon, I walked in and found her sitting at the table with them spread out like she was making plans I didn't know about. I asked, "Why are you going through those?" She looked up, calm as stone, and said, "Don't you think it's time I have a say in what happens to everything? After all, this will be mine one day." Mine. Not ours, not yours and mine. Just mine. I didn't say anything, but I felt something inside me lock up tight. She wasn't talking about a home anymore. She was talking about ownership, about control. Then the trust started slipping through my fingers like water. She'd leave without saying where she was going. I'd find her in the car late at night, whispering on the phone with that same name she always said was just a friend. If I stepped outside, she'd lower her voice. If I asked, she'd turn it into a joke. "Don't be ridiculous," she'd say. "We're adults. Stop acting like some jealous teenager." But the thing about trust is, it doesn't break with a crash. It snaps quietly, like dry wood under pressure. I felt it happening inside me. I'd walk around the house at night and everything that once felt warm started feeling like someone else's place. The kitchen, the porch, even our bed. It was like I was already a stranger in my own home. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I kept it inside, holding my cards close. But I watched. And the more I watched, the more I saw what she thought I'd never notice. Boundaries don't disappear overnight. They get chipped away by the hands of the person who promised to protect them. And I'll tell you something. When someone starts treating what you've built together like it's only theirs, that's not love anymore. That's a storm waiting to hit. They say when something's wrong, the house starts to feel different. It's true. The walls don't talk, but they remember. The floorboards creak a little louder at night. The air shifts in ways only someone who's lived there long enough can feel. That's how it started for me. Not with a confession, but with quiet signs that wouldn't leave me alone. I began to notice her voice changing when she was on the phone. Softer, lower. The kind of tone people use when they're hiding something they don't want anyone else to hear. She'd step out onto the porch late at night, phone pressed tight to her ear, whispering like the darkness itself was on her side. I'd hear pieces of sentences slip through the cracks in the door. He doesn't know. Soon. I can handle it. Every night I told myself I was imagining things. But the way her eyes avoided mine in the morning said otherwise. Then I noticed the small things. Money missing from the joint account. Not a fortune, just enough to raise questions. When I brought it up gently, she acted confused. "You're probably miscounting," she said, waving it off like it was nothing. But I've kept books longer than she's been whispering to that man. I know when something doesn't add up. One afternoon, I came back early from the store. Her car was parked in the driveway, engine still warm. When I stepped inside, the house was silent, but on the kitchen table was a folder she must have forgotten to put away. Legal papers, not just any papers. Property transfers, new account information. My name printed in small letters at the bottom, hers on top. My stomach twisted. I didn't touch it, not yet. I just stood there, staring at the proof she didn't know I'd seen. From that moment on, everything shifted. Every laugh sounded fake, every "I love you" felt thin. I began moving through my own house like a ghost, listening, watching, waiting. Not because I didn't know something was wrong, but because I wanted to be sure. And that's the thing about betrayal. It likes to hide behind half-truths. But truth always leaks out through the cracks. I could feel the proof getting closer, like a storm rumbling just beyond the tree line. I didn't know when it would hit, but I knew it was coming. The truth didn't slap me in the face. It didn't shout or scream. It slipped in like a shadow under the door. Quiet, cold, final. It was late one evening. The house was still. The kind of stillness that makes even the clock tick sound too loud. I was walking through the hallway when I heard her voice. Not soft, not sweet, a different tone. Urgent, secretive. I froze by the kitchen wall, just close enough to hear without being seen. She was on the phone with him. I didn't have to hear the name. I knew that voice. The one she once called just a friend. Her words cut through the quiet. "Once it's signed over, everything will be ours." No, he has no idea. He still trusts me. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." My chest tightened, but I didn't move. I didn't storm in. I didn't make a sound. I stood there in the dark, my hand resting on the wall, feeling the weight of every word she didn't know I'd heard. The next morning when she left for her usual lunch, I checked the folder I'd seen earlier. This time I opened it. Inside were notarized drafts of property transfers, bank forms, and a letter, written in her handwriting. A letter to him. A promise to build a life together here, on the land I built with my hands. A life carved out of my years, my work, my trust. There it was, the truth, neatly folded, signed, hidden in plain sight. I didn't confront her, not a single word. I closed the folder, placed it exactly where I found it, and walked away. Because in that moment I realized something. Knowing the truth is power, and power is best used in silence. I went about my day like nothing had happened, made my coffee, fed the chickens, sat on the porch. But inside, something quiet and strong began to form. She thought she was moving pieces on a board I didn't understand. She was wrong. I didn't say a word. I didn't confront her. I didn't let her see what I knew. I just carried the truth quietly, like a blade tucked inside my coat. And now I want to ask you, if it were you standing where I was, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent, holding the proof close, or would you have confronted them right then and there? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear how you would have handled it. The night everything boiled over wasn't some ordinary argument. It happened at the dinner table. Our son was visiting that weekend. She'd planned it, I could tell. The way the table was set, the way her eyes flicked toward him more than me, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Halfway through the meal, she cleared her throat and said, "I've been thinking it's time for some changes around here. Big ones." She didn't look at me when she said it. She looked at my son. "This place is too much for him to handle alone. He's getting older. We need to think about the future." My son shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I didn't say a word. She went on, laying out the plan like it was already decided. Sell part of the land, transfer ownership of the house for legal protection, move me into a smaller place. She even slipped in his name. Mark. The man she once called just a friend. She said he'd help manage everything. Our son stared at me, unsure, caught between loyalty and confusion. She thought cornering me at a family dinner would make it easier. She thought I'd fold like an old deck of cards. But what she didn't know was that I'd already heard her plans in her own whispered voice. She leaned in then, voice firm. This isn't about you losing anything. It's about doing what's right. We can't leave everything in your hands forever. The words hit like stones, not because they were true, but because they were a mask for greed, for betrayal. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't bang the table. I didn't give her the fight she was waiting for. I picked up my glass, took a slow sip of water, and looked her dead in the eye. Calm, silent, unshaken. That silence unsettled her more than any argument could have. She tried to fill it with words. I gave her nothing, just steady eyes. Because when someone's built their plan on the idea that you're weak, silence is the last weapon they expect. She expected me to sit there like a tired old man, nodding while she talked over me. But instead of agreeing, I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a single folded paper on the table. Not the whole folder, just one page. Her eyes flicked to it like a moth drawn to flame. I didn't say a word. I just tapped it once with my finger. She stared at it, then at me. I saw something flicker across her face, the kind of flicker that happens when a liar realizes the ground beneath them isn't as steady as they thought. My son looked from her to me, confused. She forced a laugh. What's that supposed to be? I leaned back in my chair, steady as a rock. A reminder, I said quietly, that I know more than you think. That wiped the smile off her face. She reached for the paper, but I slid it back toward me slowly, letting her see that I wasn't afraid. Just calm, patient, in control. It's nothing, she said quickly, glancing at our son. He's just trying to stir up drama. He does this when he's tired. Her voice was sharp now, not smooth like before. The cracks were showing, but I wasn't here to argue. I was here to let her feel the weight of what I knew, to let her understand that I wasn't blind and I wasn't broken. That was the point of the paper, not to reveal everything, just enough to shake the ground under her carefully built lies. I folded the page again and slipped it back into my pocket. Enjoy your dinner, I said. We'll talk soon. That line, simple, quiet, almost too calm, landed harder than any outburst could have. I watched her grip tighten around her glass. Her voice cracked when she tried to change the subject. She didn't know how much I'd seen. And that uncertainty was my advantage. I let her walk around for weeks with that nervous look in her eyes. She pretended everything was fine, but I could see it. She wasn't sleeping as soundly. She whispered more on the phone. She checked the mail before I did. She thought she still held the cards. But the thing about lies is, they always forget the quiet man who's listening. The day came when she thought she'd finally have it her way. She'd arranged a meeting at a lawyer's office. My son was there too. She wore that confident smile she saves for moments when she thinks she's already won. The lawyer slid a stack of papers onto the polished table. Property transfers, trust agreements, signatures she expected me to give without a fight. I didn't even look at them. I reached into my folder and placed down my ace, not a bluff, not a threat. The updated will, the trust deed, and a small black recorder. Her smile froze. She opened her mouth to speak, but I pressed play. Her own voice filled the room. Once it's signed over, everything will be ours. He still trusts me. Don't worry, I'll handle it. Every word was clear, cold, sharp. The lawyer stopped flipping papers. My son looked at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. She went pale. I leaned forward, my voice steady. I've already changed everything. The house, the land, the accounts, all of it. What you tried to steal isn't yours to take anymore. I explained, not cruelly, just calmly, how the trust had been updated weeks ago. How her name was nowhere on it now. How the land she thought she could use like a prize was locked away in a way she could never touch. Her hand trembled as she reached for the papers, but there was nothing left to grab. All she had were whispers. Lies. And a plan that died right there on that polished table. She tried to speak, to twist the story, to cry, but nothing she said mattered anymore. The proof was already in my hands. Her own voice buried her. Her greed built the hole she fell into. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I simply pushed my chair back and stood. I built this house with my hands, I said. And you thought you could take it with lies. For the first time in a long time, she was silent. And it wasn't the silence she used to give me. This one belonged to me. The room went quiet. Not the kind of quiet you get when no one has anything to say. the kind that swallows the air whole. Her face drained of color. My son's hands were stiff against the table. Even the lawyer leaned back in his chair, like he didn't want to be part of what was happening. Her voice, the same voice that used to fill this house with laughter, broke like glass. "You recorded me?" she whispered. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. All the certainty she wore like armor had fallen away. What stood in front of me now wasn't the woman who'd left me for another man. It was someone who had finally run out of lies. My son didn't look at her. He didn't look at me either. He stared at the papers on the table like they were something toxic. I saw it in his eyes, the moment he realized everything she'd tried to build was made of sand. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply said, "The truth doesn't need to shout. It stands on its own." She stammered something about a misunderstanding, a mistake, things getting complicated. But everyone in that room knew it wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. A plan that died the moment her own voice turned against her. She tried to cry. Maybe it was real, maybe it was a performance. But tears don't wash away intent. The lawyer quietly gathered the papers she brought and pushed them back toward her side. My son stood, his chair scraping the floor, and walked out without saying a word. And I just sat there, calm, steady, the way a man does when the truth finally straightens his back. For months, she made me feel small, like I was an old man too tired to fight for what was mine. But the thing about quiet men is that they don't make noise when they're planning. Order wasn't restored with shouting or fists. It was restored with the weight of the truth. And in that silence, she finally realized she'd lost something much bigger than the house, the land, or the money. She'd lost the one person who ever stood by her. When people betray you, they don't just lose what they wanted. They lose you. And once trust is gone, there's no way to buy it back. I didn't need to scream or break anything to get justice. I just let the truth speak louder than the lies. Respect and loyalty are quiet things. They're not loud. They don't demand attention, but once they're broken, they don't return the same. She learned that too late. If someone ever shows you they value your silence more than your worth, don't beg them to stay. Let them walk. Because peace isn't weakness. Peace is power. If you stayed with me until the end, thank you. Stories like this aren't easy to tell, but I believe some lessons need to be spoken out loud. Sometimes it's not the storm that defines us, it's how we stand when it hits. I want to hear from you. If someone you trusted once betrayed you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed silent or confronted them right away? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories matter here. If this story spoke to something in you, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and check out more stories on this channel. This space isn't just for me. It's for anyone who's ever been underestimated, hurt, or quietly strong. And before I go, remember this. Stay strong, stay wise, stay blessed.